Welcome to the Managing Your Music Career webinar. I'm Jordan Therese. I'm your host for tonight. Super excited. This is the third panel or third webinar in our series, our Indie Artist Blueprint series that's going to be happening now until December 6th. So, if you've been tuned in, thank you for being back. If this is your first webinar, it's awesome. Make sure to stay tuned for the rest of ours. And we have a little special promo that we're doing away with this webinar. So Amanda's one of our amazing mentors on the platform, and anyone who signs up for an annual subscription, we will also give you guys 1 credit for a one-on-one mentoring session. So definitely take advantage of this offer. So anyone who doesn't know about IndieFlow, we're the #1 all-in-one platform for artist entrepreneurs. So we're here to help you jumpstart your music career and help you plan your projects, release your music, and promote your tools in your music as well. So that's a little bit about us. Amanda, thank you so much for joining me today.
Happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. Would you provide a little brief overview of what you do in the industry and your career for people who are tuning in?
Sure. From the beginning?
On whatever journey you want to take us on.
Very, very long. I'll try and give the high level overview, which is I'll say I spent the first part of my career very much in the creative space. I was a DJ, I worked as a recording engineer, and then I went on to do A&R in music publishing, which, is, signing writers and producers and artists and putting them in sessions and pitching songs and just always being in the studio and around music. And over the past several years, I've definitely shifted out of the creative space and much more into the business side. I always was doing deals when I was an A&R person, but always under, the supervision of my bosses and not necessarily at the level I am now. And now I'm sort of in a place where I've pivoted a lot into the music tech space. And I work a lot with connecting rights holders and music tech companies, as well as advising creatives more on their business strategy. So less about this song sounds good, we should send it to so-and-so, and more about you need to be affiliated with these organizations, and these are what your legal documents should look like, and this is what your team should look like. I mean, really the nature of, this call is sort of where I've moved into. I'm sorry, I thought I closed my Slack so it wouldn't make a noise.
You're all
quit Slack. But yeah. So obviously I still love music and but I'm more passionate today on the work front about the business of music, I'll say, than the creation of it. I get to leave that to a different generation.
Yeah. I guess what are some things that inspired you from moving to the creative to the business side? Because we see so many execs and people in the industry who do have that background as a creative.
What inspired me to move? That's a great question. One, just the more exposure I got to it, the more I liked it. And the problem solving that you have to do in business, I believe, is more challenging, or I'll say different, than the problem solving that you have to do when you're more in the trenches with the creatives. So, when you're, dealing with creative people across the board, it could be artists, it could be chefs, it could be, fine artists, whatever. There's a lot of, how do I say this? You're dealing more with emotions and just creative spirits and the things that can go right and wrong with all of those different energies, right? And you're dealing with practical things oh, I got to the studio, no one was here, or the board is dead, oh, the artwork's wrong, the credits, all these sort of little things. And there's only so much of that you can, there's only, once you figure out how to do all those things, you know how to do them, right?
Yeah.
But moving into more of the business side, and especially on the tech side, with the way everything's going. It's like every day I learn something new and I meet someone new. And so I think I was just growing. I don't know what if it was inspiration as much of just like growing into that next stage for me.
Yeah, awesome. Can you like dive a little, you do like so much, which is awesome. Can you dive a little bit more on like, you obviously like work like, helping tech and like ventures and stuff like that, but also still working like with creatives to like a certain extent. Can you
Yeah.
kind of like explain like what does a day in the life look like? Like what does it look like that you're doing?
Yeah. So I that's a great question. My day is very busy. Yeah, as you say, I still work with a couple of writers and artists. One very big writer, who is also an artist, who is also an entrepreneur and has a publishing company and has a record label, a creative studio, a merch company, and she also manages other artists, writers, and producers. So
Wow.
as it pertains, I can stick to that side of my business for this call. I don't know if the other side is as interesting to this, to this group, but that takes on a range of things for me. It could be as high level as, renegotiating a publishing deal or signing somebody to a publishing deal or negotiating splits or a brand deal or approving a sync or um, dealing with a stylist not doing his or her job and therefore needing to find a stylist last minute for like our photo shoot. Like it really spans the gamut.
Uh,
But also like my role with my larger client is to go out and identify strategic partners for us to be able to move independently, through the business, through, I'll say through the music business ecosystem and achieve what we need to achieve. So, we need to have we need a publisher, we need a distributor, as an independent artist, we need PR, we need digital marketing, we need social media, we need, all sorts of things. And so part of my job has been identifying who those partners are and managing those partners and making sure everyone is aligned and communicating and sort of executing, for the vision of whatever we're working on at the time.
yeah, awesome. You mentioned like figuring out like what needs to be achieved and like what we're like looking to do. How, I guess, like when you're working with your clients, like how do you figure out like, okay, this like right now like needs to be the big goal, and like how, especially for independent artists, like how do you identify
Yeah, like
what needs to be.
prioritize. How do you prioritize? Yeah, I mean, sometimes the priorities are just forced, right? Like, so for example, if you have a release coming and you're also working on other music, but you don't have the artwork for your release or the splits decided or the paperwork done or whatever the thing is, you're going to have to, move that to the top of the list and get it sorted and deal with the other thing. Um, I think it all 100%, and I see lots of people saying this out in the ether, and I do think it's true. Like the number one priority should be the music, right? Because if the music is not, and I'm not saying good or bad because music is so subjective, but if the if the art is not where you like doesn't reflect you as an artist, whatever that means to you, then it's like sort of doesn't really matter what other things you do,
Yeah.
because it's not. Again, I don't want to say it's not going to work. It's all because art is so subjective, but like if you're not feeling good about that, then you're not going to be able to execute on all the other things you need to execute on. Because you're, as a creative, you're always going to be coming back to like, wait, but this doesn't feel right, or this song doesn't represent me, or that lyric should have been tweaked, or this mix should have been different, whatever. So you have to, like, I would always prioritize that before, jumping on Instagram and TikTok and all these things. Sorry, guys. Let me decline. I swear I turn all my devices off, but
Oh, you're busy. Like you're
I
good.
yeah. That's why I say I have 5 email accounts, 4 companies on Slack,
Oh my gosh.
WhatsApp, iMessage. and a 7-year-old.
Oh, yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot for sure. In the previous question, like one of the things that you talked about that you do is like kind of handling like music publishing and like
Mhm.
things for people who don't know what music publishing is. Can you explain?
Sure. I could try. Yeah. So, every recording, every song has two sides, a master side and a publishing side. And the master side represents what was at the time the master recording, which was the original recording on the vinyl from which you then made copies of, first it was vinyl, then it was cassette CDs. Now it's kind of, those things are irrelevant, but the terminology has not changed. And that represents like the literal actual finished recording product. The publishing side reflects the copyright, which is essentially the lyrics and the melody, which is the lyrics and the melody. It's the song part of the recording. You can have a song and have publishing and have a copyright without having a master recording. You could literally write it down on paper and hum something, and you've written a song, and that is your copyright. So that's the easiest way I can explain it for now. And so when you do put a record out and you are getting streams and radio plays and other types of interaction through the various, because there's so many ways to consume now, you're generating income on both the master side and the publishing side. And if you are signed to a record label, they are responsible for collecting the master side royalties and paying through per the terms of your deal. And or if you're signed to a distributor, or if you're just doing it yourself through DistroKid or Indie Flow. Sorry if I don't even.
Oh, good.
Yeah, sorry. Distributing it through Indie Flow. They're responsible for paying that through. However, the publishing income is separate, and that income there's two things. The performance income goes directly to performance rights organizations, which you need to be a member of, and they pay the writer directly. But then the publisher is the person who collects the publishing income on your behalf in order to pay that through to you. There is a world in which you can be your own publisher, and many people done it, and I've done it for clients. However, personally, like, it's one thing if you're only, collecting monies in the US, fine, you can go, where to go to collect the income. But when you're talking about collecting income on a global level, you really, in my opinion, need someone who has that infrastructure set up to go collect those monies for you. And of course, back in the day, and even to this day, if you're a co-publisher, someone who's doing more than administration, in theory, is also a creative partner. So they're taking a part of your publishing, but in return, adding creative value, whatever that is. It could be sync, it could be co-writes, it could be numerous things. I mean, it's changing all the time, but yeah.
Okay, awesome. And you mentioned the word sync. Could you
Yeah.
explain what that is for people who may
Sure. A
not?
sync is when you literally sync audio to a video. Like, it's as simple as that. So when you're seeing, I don't know, just music in commercials or in film or TV, those are synchronizations, and that requires a special license. They can't just take that music and use it. They need to get permission, and, and ideally pay for it. And when those syncs occur, and when those, visuals play and the audio is played with it, it generates performance income. And that income, then flows through to all your other royalties.
Nice. Obviously, like sync is kind of hard to come by for like a lot of people. Getting placements is like super competitive. But what do you have any advice for like artists in terms of like maximizing their income through publishing in other ways?
That's a whole master class.
Yeah.
How to maximize your income. My general stance on that and we could have a whole other class about it, is that you should be open to anything, right?
Yeah.
So whether that is a sink that comes in that's $250, but you think it should be $5,000, so you say, so you won't approve it, or a co-write that gets pitched to you. And I'm not saying you should move outside of your creative comfort, but I have had the experience as a publisher where certain writers think they're too good to work with other writers, or just for whatever reason, don't want to be collaborative. And I think that's really to their detriment. Um, this is a game of networking and relationships and pennies.
Yeah.
So, like, I never say no to a sync. Like, I get 100 sync requests a day for this particular client who has very, very big songs, and they range. Sometimes they're $300,000, literally. Sometimes they're $1,000 because it depends on the budget of whatever the thing is. And I literally never say, it's like the easiest thing for me to do is to be like, yep,
Yeah.
put it in, because then that translates into other people seeing it, hearing it, knowing about it. Like, you have to look at Sync. To me, yes, it can be a good check, but also can be a great promotional tool. As
Yeah.
far as optimizing your publishing royalties, um, that's really like there's I don't that's really it's a publisher's job to go out and ensure that they are collecting all the monies that are being generated. You, as like an artist or a writer, I don't think, beyond auditing your publisher and looking for errors, which I don't think anyone on this call is like at that stage yet. Like, I don't know how you would optimize your publishing income beyond that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But outside of Sync, there's all sorts of organizations out there right now that are trying to bring additional income in for independent artists. So there's, all of these direct to fan products. Like, there's a product called Vault.fan, which enables you to release exclusive music and other things directly to your fans. Um, there's just like so many different companies you can go to do different types of releases, remixes, behind the scenes, like all those kinds of diverse content opportunities, and monetize them. That may only monetize in that moment, right? Like, they might not translate to a master royalty or publishing royalty because you might not be releasing the record on a DSP, but maybe you'll get $5 from a fan who will then go, also stream your records.
Awesome. That's great advice. You mentioned like co-writes and like always saying yes. Do you have any like tips on how artists, especially like independent artists, should approach like potential collaborators about like wanting to do a session with them, or like what's the like how do you like intro that with like someone that you follow or whatever?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I do think one advantage of having a publisher is that that person's job is literally to help you connect with people and co-write.
Yeah.
And I also realize that not everybody wants to co-write. Some people are, individual artists, musicians, and that's okay too. But I speak to what is like more of the norm now, and more of the norm now is co-writing and collaborating and stuff like that. So there's also various companies out in the ether that support and enable co-writing. But as far as the like, how would you approach someone if you went into their DMs or whatnot? I mean, I always lead with just full who I am, honesty, transparency. Like, hey, I'm a huge fan. I'm not a huge artist, but like, I've been following you. Here's some of my work. Like, would you be open to doing a session? If I were a writer, I would be much more receptive to that than someone who came in, saying like providing all their stats or something like that, or dropping lots of names. Like, I was with whatever, Jay-Z yesterday, whatever it is, I would just go and like genuine and humble and like be a human being about it. I mean, we're
Yeah.
all human beings, and um, we all look up to and admire other people. And I would just approach it as everyone is just we're all doing our thing, trying to make it work, and sometimes it clicks and sometimes it doesn't click, and you just got to put yourself out there. I don't come from like, I don't come from the generation of like DMing for work and stuff like that. Like, that is not how I do business or will ever do business, I don't think, like over um, like Instagram or like Twitter or anything like that. But I understand that's very common. So I would say just be authentic. Cliche, but it's true.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's yeah, classic advice because it's
Classic. I did
great.
not invent it.
Just for everyone tuning in, we're around the halfway point, so throw in your questions, and we'll get to them. But so you kind of touched on this earlier, or you mentioned the word split sheet.
Yeah.
And that's definitely something important when collaborating with other people. Can you like explain like what a split sheet is and why it's so important to have them at sessions?
Yeah. So I actually don't know if I believe in having a physical split sheet. I would say one out of every 10 songs that I work on has a physical split sheet that people are required to sign. Most split negotiations are done, over text and then confirmed over email. And then the splits are accordingly delivered to publishers and registered with the PROs. Um, that being said, it is, of course, important to have the split conversation before you release a record. Um, you guys may not know this, but as far as registering with like a BMI, ASCAP, CSAC, like whoever registers the song first, like if there's a dispute, those splits will take precedent. So for some reason you didn't negotiate your splits and one of the parties in the song goes and registers and they say they have 80%, and they only allocate 20% to anyone and someone else. And then someone comes in after and says, no, actually, like there were 5 of us and we all had 20% and they put that in, then that will generate a dispute. But if there's still a disagreement, the person who got in first will have the leverage. And in the end, everyone's payments will be held up no matter what, because there's a dispute. So I would just say having that conversation, knowing that you need to have that conversation is really important. That being said, it's super nuanced. Nobody wants to go into a room and be like, hey guys, before we start, let's well, first of all, you can't, only in Nashville do they truly go, if you're in the room, it's equal splits, 100% equal. You could be not even a writer, but if you're physically there, that's how it's done in Nashville. Outside of that, in the pop world, it's like, oh, you go into the studio, you write a song with a producer and another writer, then that producer sends it to like his sub producer, then that producer sends it to another writer who tweaks the chorus. Like it's going through all of these people. So it gets very complicated and you really cannot have the discussion until the song is finished.
Yeah.
And then it can, I don't know if I'm directly answering your question. I'm just sort of talking through the process. It can be like very hairy, like a lot of disagreements come, of course it's all lovely when you're writing the song. And then when you get to the business, it can get very difficult to negotiate splits. Everyone has a different idea of what they did and didn't, contribute and what those contributions warrant. My stance has historically been just to, within reason, kind of go with the flow. Like, I don't think it's important to fight over 1 to 2% of publishing. Other people would disagree. Like people will fight like tooth and nail, oh, that person can't have 26 and I have 25. Like,
Right.
And that's where like the ego gets involved. And then it's just, I don't think it's worth it. My thing is, I've said this before, it's in my bio that like this lovely journalist wrote, like, just get the music out there. Like it's hard enough to write a song and get it released and get people to listen to it. You're going to argue about like 1%, like,
right.
Just agree and move on. There'll be another song.
Yeah. I love there'll be another song mentality.
There will. Yeah. Especially now. Are you kidding? It's like
Yeah. No, that's a good point. It's also like Would you rather have 100% of a
Well,
grape or
yes,
like
exactly. I mean, I
50%
said this
of
to
a
someone
melon?
yesterday. I was just discussing this with someone yesterday. I'm like, "Do you want a piece of a pie or no pie?" Like,
Right, right. Yeah.
like, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, hearing about what people like takes on like split, because like yeah, like in Nashville, it's like everything's
Yeah,
equal.
it's very different in Nashville. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
very
super different. So kind of in like the same vein of like almost like negotiations, because I know that you also work in like the brand partnerships like space as well with your clients. Like
yeah, a little bit.
yeah.
Not a brand, yeah.
You handle like some like the negotiation stuff though,
Oh,
right?
yeah, yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay, okay, perfect, perfect. Like, what are some key aspects of negotiations that like emerging artists or people like just starting out as careers might overlook when it might come to like
Really
partnership?
good question. Yeah. So I would definitely look at the term
Yeah.
and the use of name and likeness, right? Because if you were Lizzo 15 years ago and you did a small deal, but that deal enabled you to use, her name and likeness, for 30 years or in perpetuity. And then all of a sudden she becomes, the superstar she is now. And she has this, I can't really think of an example, but, and then they get to benefit off of that and she doesn't get anything else. So I would always look at the term. I think that's really important. I would look at approvals because oftentimes when you're doing brand deals or other types of deals, um, they don't put in approval clauses, meaning they could take your name and likeness or your song and use it somewhere and not need you to approve it. But as the creative, you have every right, in my opinion, to always approve it as long as you approve it within an appropriate period of time. Like if someone's trying to reach out to you for 3 weeks and you're not getting back to them, you
Right.
know, so that's not cool, first of all, but you know what I mean? Then you can't expect them to, so sort of a mutually beneficial approval clause, like you need to approve within 7 days or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So those things, as well as like rights ownership, like it doesn't apply so much for brands, but like let's say you're writing um a song for a Netflix show, the way Netflix works, and it's fine to agree to this as long as you understand it, is that they usually take a portion of the publishing. So they come in and automatically say, okay, these four writers are going to write this song, and Netflix is going to own the master and have 25% of the music publishing. So, again, I wouldn't, in the spirit of not saying no too often, I wouldn't not write a song for Netflix just because they're taking a small portion. I mean, Disney's much worse. Disney takes 100%. Like if you want to write for Disney, you'll get a check up front, but like that's pretty much it. They own everything, but you get to write for Disney. So just being mindful of what you're like allocating in terms of your rights. This would be like the three things I would look up.
Yeah. In like a similar vein on that, like, can you maybe like share any tips you have about setting clear boundaries or intentions before you even get into like the negotiation stage with a company or whatever?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Well, at certain levels, artists already know their budgets, right? So if you know you're not going to participate in something because, um, or anything that's, whatever, below a certain amount because that's, it's not worth your time or whatever, I suppose you could say that in advance. Um, It's a really good question. I mean, I don't know how you set boundaries before you start a negotiation unless it's a type of deal you've done before, you have a template for that deal, you know what you require and you put that out there first. Otherwise, like honestly with with who I think is on here, like I don't really think you can set boundaries before.
Yeah.
Um
No, that makes sense. It sounds like one of the most important aspects of like making these negotiations is like having some sort of leverage. And if you don't have any leverage, there's only so much that like you
exactly. Yeah. So yeah, and thinking you have leverage before you do and acting like you have leverage before you do is a sure way to like turn someone off.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
But,
that's
so I guess that's the answer. Like that's more, I think, of an important takeaway. Like, yes, you're the artist. Yes, you're the creative. Yes, they need you and they need your music, but you also need them if you're trying to make a living off of what you're doing. It's just, you know, yeah.
yeah.
But I mean, it's a good question. I think about it some more, and I'll come back to you over email and share with the group. But
Yeah.
I've never, I have set like boundaries. There's certain boundaries for my client whereby if she's asked to write with someone and she is at the level where she charges a fee to go into a room with someone, I tell them, this is the fee. But the reality is, if it's someone she loves, she'll waive the fee.
Yeah.
So it's so dependent on the circumstance.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. One last question about like negotiations and stuff like that. But do you have any, negotiations can be really tough and it can be very like hot button subject, depending on like how it's going and who you're working with.
Yes.
But can you share any strategies about like maintaining a positive relationship with someone and like industry professionals? Like if like let's say the
Great
negotiations
question.
don't go well.
You're like, are you going to be like the next Gail King or Oprah
Oh
here?
my God, I love them.
That's a very good question. Yeah, I mean, always be professional, polite, and unemotional.
Hmm.
Other people will not stay that way, but it is your job to stay that way.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it is
Yeah.
my job to stay that way.
Yeah.
People get very emotional, they get rude, they get disrespectful, they get angry. Um, and there's ways to say strong things in a professional matter.
Yeah.
And if you can back up what you're asking for or what you're denying, with facts, um, you know, then you should be in a good position. I mean, I can give an example. I had a situation recently where a record was put out and somehow, I don't know how, honestly, one of the contributors got completely left out of the mix. Like he wasn't credited, he wasn't paid, like he was
Wow.
nowhere to be found. So his lawyers reached out very upset to us, being like, this is like crazy and like you forgot us and
Yeah.
like we want, $15,000 by the end of the week.
Oh,
And like we need to and like 50% of the budget, like just making all these like demands.
yeah.
And I wrote back, completely acknowledged the mistake because
Yeah.
we made a huge mistake. I don't know how it happened.
Yeah.
Told them I would be talking to all the other parties involved to remedy the mistake, and that I would be in touch. And they kept following up and following up, like, no, okay, now it has to be this. Like they just kept
That's
like putting so much pressure on us, and I was just like, I said in an email very nicely, we all work in the music industry. It is not realistic to expect that a dispute be solved within 7 days. It doesn't happen. That's just not the practical reality of how things work. You might
yeah.
want it to be that way, but
Right.
and I'm like, we're acknowledging our mistake. We want to fix it, and we are working on it. And I communicated with them every week and gave them updates, even if the update was, I haven't heard back from this party or I haven't heard back from that party.
Hmm.
But that conversation got very heated, and I just tried to keep it very like practical. Like, please, what I wanted to say was like, you're insane. Please give me 5 examples of when you've ever had a dispute and you've solved it in 7 days and gotten everything you've asked for. Please tell me when you.
Right.
But
Right.
I didn't say that. But I want
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the point you made at the beginning about like taking the emotion out of it is gonna like give you clarity, like
yeah.
make strong decisions. Like there's nothing that you can say like effectively, like if you're just like all over the place. So I think that's like
No, and that comes with time and experience. I mean, I can't say I, had such control over my emotions, reactions, feelings, whatever, when I was a younger executive and things would go wrong and I would stress out. Like, that just comes with like having been presented with all the issues that one can be presented with and knowing that there's always a way forward,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that.
even if you don't know it in the moment.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of switching gears and like talking a little bit more about like strategic investments that artists can be making like in
Hmm.
themselves in their careers. Like obviously like being an independent artist, like the budget isn't really there. Like
Yeah.
it can be hard to like figure out what is worth investing into. So like what would you say that the balance should be between like short-term investments and needs such as like maybe like equipment or like a new mic or something as
Yeah.
opposed to something that's more long-term like having like brand development or like investing in like really good producers that can help take your career to
Yeah.
the next level?
Oh man, that's such a hard question. I don't know how to answer that question not on an individual basis, to be honest with you. I can't sit here and say everyone should put more money into social media than they should into gear, or
Yeah.
everyone should put more money into, a mix engineer instead of a PR firm, or like I really can't say without seeing the individual picture of that artist,
Yeah.
understanding where they're coming and where they're trying to go and what their goals are.
Yeah. No, but that's good. You said like you can't like you need to first figure out where you're coming from and where you want to go. And
Yeah.
that help determine you answered it perfectly. That will help determine like, where what type of investments you should be making in your
Yeah, I
career.
can't just, like, unilaterally say, "Here, everyone
Right.
50% goes," like, it's impossible. I can't do
Yeah.
it. I
Yeah.
would run from anyone, by the way, who, tries to tell you before they know you what you should do.
That's another great piece of advice. You're right.
Yeah.
How can you talk about like I feel like now more than ever, like because of how hard it is to like make like a really strong income as a creative in the music industry, we're hearing more about like crowdfunding and like grants and like all
Yeah.
these things. Like how I guess like how can artists like leverage those types of opportunities and when do they know like okay I should be like they have an audience that they can even crowdfund with and like those types of things.
It's a good question. I've never crowdfunded with an artist, but I am, of course, familiar with it. Um, in some ways, I feel like you could start anytime
Mm.
and just test the waters.
Yeah.
And if for some reason you feel like you're not getting the reaction you want, okay, just pause and revisit when you feel like you have a stronger community.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know that there's ever a bad time to put yourself out there and see the ways in which your fans will support you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I don't know that you need to say, I have to wait until I have 100,000 followers or this or this or that.
Right.
Um, Yeah, I've never gone through that exercise, so it's a little bit hard for me, to speak about, but that's how I would approach it if someone were to come if someone I was working with now is like, thinking about crowdfunding and whatever, giving away, 1% income stream, whatever, however they wanna well, I guess crowdfunding, you don't have to give anything back, do you,
Yeah,
actually?
I've seen it in both ways where like it can like it could just be like almost
A
like go
donation?
yeah,
Yeah,
donation or like with platforms like I'm sure you've heard of like sound.xyz where like you
yeah,
can
very familiar.
like
Yeah.
chain and stuff like and like the fans can have like a little version of it for
Yeah, I mean, you should always, even if it is like a donation, you should always, give something in return.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's never, it's like, what was I reading or hearing? It's a Japanese principle about what is it? What is it? I'm not gonna get it right now. Just something about not striving for perfection. But there's a much more elegant way to say this. Oh, what was it called? Anyway, just like if you're always waiting for it to be like the perfect time
Yeah.
or having the perfect whatever, the perfect song, the perfect photo, the perfect caption, the perfect this, like you're never going to do it. You just have to keep acting. You have to take steps forward.
Yeah.
And then you learn from the response to all of that, and then you iterate from there. It's
Yeah.
what they do. I mean, and that is one thing that tech does very well, right? So they have
Yeah.
all these, you start with an MVP product, which I used to think was like MVP, like, oh, you just share it with like the most before I got into tech, but it's not. It's something like I forgot what it stands for, but it's like the quickest version they put together that functions that they can share with people. They
Mhm.
get it out so they can get feedback. Then they get the beta out. Then they get the alpha out and they get it out and then they iterate it again. They're in the tech space. Everyone's just willing to try things so that they can get feedback
Yeah.
from the people they're trying to solve problems for. In the case of being an artist, you're trying to connect with people and engage with people who resonate with your music. But you need feedback to understand who are those people you know, how will they support you? And
Yeah.
yeah, you can't wait for like perfect.
Yeah. No, I love that.
I
I love
can't remember what
that.
the thing is though.
No,
Frustrates me.
all good. Yeah, that's definitely something like I've learned. I mean, like I'm only like 22, but like as like I think
God, get out of here.
yeah, throughout like college, like the power of sloppily going into action with something and just like figuring out as you go and just like testing things out, like especially as a creative, is
Yeah, you will just not get something out. Like you just won't. If you're waiting for it to be perfect, then you're just not going to get it out.
no, exactly. As we wrap up, I just want to remind you guys, we have a little offer. So if you sign up annually, you can get a free one-on-one credit for mentorship. You can book with Amanda and ask all of the other questions you may have. But we have like 2 minutes left.
I mean, I can give an extra 5 for questions. I feel bad.
Yeah. If anyone has questions, like throw them in the chat.
I have
Um,
questions.
Yeah, don't be shy. Ask. Listen, this is your time now. So this is like a freebie, like little one-on-one moment with Amanda. So just ask whatever questions you may have. But one of the last questions I have for you is what has been the proudest moment in your career thus far?
Oh my God. You are Oprah.
I love Oprah, so huge compliment.
I don't even know how to answer. I mean, I guess being able to run my own business and sustain off of that makes
Yeah,
me feel proud.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I mean, a couple of decades ago, in between music industry jobs and trying to figure it out, I was walking dogs and checking coats to make ends meet. So I guess being able to have my own business, doing what I do
yeah.
is a proud moment. Yeah.
Amazing. I love that answer. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's something to definitely be super, super proud of. And just like your work, like you've like been a support system for like artists and like companies in the music
Yes,
industry. And I
I
think,
am.
like
I
we
am like
need
a
more.
mother to all,
Yeah, that's like
including,
thing.
including like, yeah, when I'm in house, I tend to, yeah, yeah.
My one last.
Then
Oh,
we'll
what?
no, there's no questions.
Well, that means they're gonna book a session with you and get one-on-one personal time. Like that's what's gonna happen. My final question is, what can people expect from a mentorship session with you?
Honesty and
Period.
actionable insights, like,
Love.
literal things you can actually do that day to help move you forward.
Yeah, I love that. That was a great one to wrap it up with. Everyone, use the link that I just dropped to get a free credit for a one-on-one session. And Amanda, thank you so much. This has
Thank you
been.
for having me. I hope it was everything you wanted it to be.
Yes, it was fabulous. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye,
Have a
everyone.
good day. Bye.